Hello Flosstube! Welcome to the Traveling Stocking Stitcher. This is my second episode of my channel where I talk about cross-stitching Christmas stockings and travel-related things, places that I've visited. My name is Deb and I'm happy to have you here today. And so what I wanted to do, since I'm a monogamous stitcher, I'm not going to have a ton of whips to show you. So I decided to format my channel in different topics that I'm going to cover each time. I'll probably do them about monthly. And some of the things that you may want to see in no particular order and subject to my whim, but things like cats. So I have lots of cat charts and patterns that I have done, stockings, and I don't know if a lot of travel cats, but oh, maybe I do. I have some culture cats. So we'll show that, and I know that the cross-stitch community and cats, the Venn diagram of those kind of looks like this, because pretty much everybody you see on Flosstube seems to have a cat, and so that probably will be a popular one. Travel posters, I'm going to be doing a series of travel posters, so that probably would be a theme all its own. Some of the vintage family stockings that I did many years ago, and when I started stitching for people that weren't my family and I wanted some stockings, I decided to do the reindeer. Dancer, Prancer, Vixen, Dasher, Dancer, Prancer, Vixen, and so I can show you some of those. Those are a little oldies but goodie ones. You may see those. Animals. I have lots of animal patterns that I might use for stockings and other things. Angels, kind of a fancy lady subgenre. Also fairies and angels and elves, sprites, those kinds of things. You might see an episode about that. Nativity. And UFOs, unfinished objects. So if those interest you, you may want to subscribe, just a hint, or you may also want to check that notification to let you know when one of my videos are coming up again. So today the topic is fancy ladies, and as you can see, I've dressed for the occasion. Frankly, haven't been anywhere for 2 years, so figured it was a good excuse to put something else on. So got all blinged up for you, and so we're going to have a fancy lady promenade. Now I think parades, whip parades, those kinds of things, I think about clowns and Shriners driving around in little cars in circles. But you know, any self-respecting fancy lady is not going to be parading about. We're going to have a fancy lady promenade. So let's get started with what we're going to do. And the first thing I want to talk about then is the finishes that I've done. So we'll talk about some stockings. And we'll call this, since they're finishes, we're going to call this At My Whip's End. Alright, so this one is Celtic Ladies. If you've seen any of these, the designer is Marilyn Levitt. Let me look, make sure I got it right. Marilyn Levitt Imbloom. And she does the Lavender and Lace series. She also has a Told in the Garden, TIAG.com, if you look at that. She's got a lot of different patterns and a lot of fancy ladies, those kinds of things. But my focus here is the Celtic Ladies. And if you've seen any of these, first thing I do when I see a Christmas pattern, or see a pattern, any kind of pattern, and particularly if it's got Christmas theme to it, I think, how could I make that into a Christmas stocking? So I took a look at this. This is Celtic Christmas that she did. And when I saw this, I didn't have the, how can this be made into a stocking? My thought was, how has this not been made into a stocking? So here she is. You see the slope of the dress. I mean, it just makes sense. I mean, even when you frame it up, it kind of looks off center, because I've seen some where they cut the mat out to the side, and you know, that looks cool too. But this screams out, make a Christmas stocking out of me. So that's what I did. Now, I have criteria. I talked about the reindeer, and when I branched out from that, I had two things. You have to have a Christmas theme, and you have to have a real name. So for instance, when I was trying to come up with a name for her, you know, Christmas, Poinsettia. Now, Poinsettia's Christmas theme, never heard of anybody named Poinsettia. So I thought about Amaryllis. You see bulbs being forced at Christmas time for Amaryllis flowers, and we have some precedent for it being a name. If you've ever watched The Music Man, you know that Ron Howard, little Opie, can't say the little girl Amaryllis's name because he has a lisp. So she could become a Christmas stocking. That's all I needed to know. So I searched through the internet, and I'd not seen anybody that had done a Christmas stocking out of this. I've since seen there's at Tina Stitchers who has done a Christmas stocking as well. I've seen her since, but like I said, I looked all over Pinterest and stuff, couldn't find one that had been done before I did it. So based on that, let's take a look at what we did here. Here she is. There's Amaryllis. I'm going to have to get way back here so to see the whole thing, and then I'll zoom in close to give you a different picture. So you see I didn't do too much different to her, except for the fact that I gave her the name Amaryllis, and I had to make, since the letters are going to go all the way across, I had to make it smaller. And so I think the row is about 2 rows smaller than normal. And then I decided to give her, instead of a little wreath that she's carrying with the candles in it, that'll look familiar to you in a minute, but I decided to put our Amaryllis in her hand. And so what I needed to do is find a pattern for an Amaryllis. So again, I looked all over the place and I found Cooler, the Winter Cat Sampler from Cooler Design. The trick was to find a pattern that wasn't all about amaryllises, because it would be enormous. But I found this Winter Cat Sampler, looks like this, and it had a little amaryllis plant sitting on the table. And I just took 2 blooms and kind of used some of the stem as my design, and I changed the colors to match the colors of her dress. So I used the same colors in the dress that were in the flowers, and I kind of, like I said, winged it on the thing here and did it that way. And so I did the flowers 1/1, as well as the face and the hands. I did 1/1 as well, and the reason for that is to get them proportionally, otherwise it would have been, again, enormous. But you don't have to do the face and the hands 1/1, but it makes it a little more subtle and that kind of thing. And I did change the hand a little bit. You would think that this was the hardest part of the whole thing, was doing the hand. Because if you're holding, you notice she's holding here, she's holding this wreath and her hand is held out like this. But if you're holding a flower, your hand's going to be like this. And there's a reason why artists, put gloves on people and stuff, because it's hard to do. It's hard to stitch like that as well. But I did practice. Whoops, dropped on the floor. I did my practicing. Here's my little sheet here where I did all the stitching of the flowers twice. And you can see this little grubby little baby fist here that didn't turn out so well. So I redid it, and I finally got one I was kind of happy with over here. So that's kind of my test job. So sometimes you have to do some things like that. So I don't know if I mentioned, this is 2/2 on Snow White with Lurex. I got it from the Yarn Stories Etsy shop. And again, I used most of the colorful colors. There's really not a ton of colors in here. And so if you see close up, that's what she looks like. And on the face, on the 1/1, I did a continental stitch. And I've heard people say how about that can be a problem, it's going to pull your fabric and stuff. But I found they laid much nicer that way, especially because I was doing this on a linen kind of thing. They kept wanting to slide, the stitches kept wanting to slide over that little line of fabric. So the continental stitch, where you go up, instead of just going up to the X and down one and then up over, you kind of go backwards, so you go left. I do from bottom left to upper right, and then you would go back to in front of the bottom left and do the upper right. So you're kind of like working your way backward, if that makes any sense. You can look up a video. There's plenty of videos out there. But I found that laid much nicer, so that's a little hint for you. You might want to know as well. And like I said, it took a lot of courage for me to do this. When I was starting out, I looked at these and I thought, they're gorgeous, but they terrify me. And so what I did is, when my nephew had a baby in 2020, and his name was Max, and I thought, I'm going to do Max the dog from the Grinch. I'll go find a pattern, whip it up, done. Well, I'll have a whole separate video on that, because what I ended up doing is making a Max prototype, totally designed from scratch for myself, and then I thought of ways I wanted to change it, so I re-stitched it all and made it for my nephew. And then as long as I was at it and I looked all this stuff up, I had a lot of Grinch ideas, so I made a Grinch stocking with a little Max in it. And so it wasn't until I did all of those that I felt comfortable that, yeah, I think I can tackle one of those ladies. So based on that information, I want you to have the courage to think, if you've seen these and thought you couldn't do it, there's plenty of reasons why you can. First of all, I know there's beads, but I actually find beads fun. I now will try to put beads on pretty much anything if I can get away with it. If a husband stands still for too long, he's going to get a bead sewed on him. So, yeah, I love the beads. And it took me, I don't know, a day or two to put the beads on. It wasn't really long. And there's like 1,200 beads or something, not to scare you, but it wasn't that bad. It really wasn't. And the other thing is look at this. Look at all this negative space. This is not a full coverage. This is not a HAED. You don't have to worry about stitching all of this stuff. All this stuff is blank. So look at that. There's not a lot of stitching on there, even around the medallions and stuff. There's a lot of open space that you don't have to stitch. So that's kind of a good thing. Metallics, sure, there's metallics, but guess what? It's Petite Treasure braid. And Petite Treasure braid is the bunny hill of metallics. If you've ever used Kreinik, which, you know, is the diamond slope, the black diamond slope, you know that piece of cake. You can do Petite Treasure braid. Very easy to do. There aren't a lot of color changes. There isn't a lot of confetti. If anything, the dress gets kind of boring. Because I think there's 4 colors of the dress maybe. And so, but you don't have to be switching out your needles left and right. There aren't a lot of fractional stitches except a little bit around the face. And same thing with back stitching. So those of us who don't like to back stitch, that was a dream. You know, just around the hands and face was all you need to do for a little definition. Really not that big. She is big. She's like a 19-inch. Most stockings are like 16 inches. But you don't want to go any lower probably than, or bigger. I don't know if it's lower or bigger, but you could do it on Aida, I guess is what I'm trying to say. You wouldn't have to do the skin 1/1. Not everybody does. In that case, you could do a 16 count Aida instead of a 32 count. You want to make sure the beads fit is the only reason you don't want to do that. You could probably get away with a 14 and have it look okay too. But like I said, because of all of those things, you could do it on Aida. If that's what you're afraid of, you can do this. You can do this. That's the only thing I want to make sure you know. So jump in there and do it. The backing on it, I just used some cotton fabric that kind of looked Amaryllis-y. It's got a little bit of a gold tint to it. I think if I go sideways you can see a little bit of gold in there. And I noticed because I normally use felt, it gives it a little more structure. And so what I did is, because when she hung up, she was not hanging right. She would kind of like fold in on herself. Just grabbed a magazine, rolled it up, stuck it in there, and then she had a little more heft to her, and she would lay a little flatter. So another little trick for when you're hanging up your Christmas stockings. Okay. All right. So that is Amaryllis. I think I've told you everything I wanted to about her. So once I did that one, I was raring to go. So let's bring on another challenge. Let's put some black fabric under it, huh? Okay. So what happened was I saw this on Pinterest. It was a mock-up. I hadn't seen it done anywhere, stitched up, but it made me think of Santa Lucia. And in countries like Sweden and in Denmark, Scandinavian countries, and in Italy, they have Santa Lucia Day or St. Lucy's Day. And the girls dress in these white baptismal robes, and they have a red sash that's representative of the martyrdom, the blood of the martyrdom of Santa Lucia. Apparently she's had some horrible death. And so that's how they celebrate. They wear a crown of evergreen, a wreath on their head with lingonberries and candles. And so I thought, oh, let's see, what can I do? So I thought, here, I'm going to use the Celtic Ladies. They have a winter, spring, summer, fall. So autumn has this sash, or not sash, but a shawl. And I thought, oh, I could make that into a sash. I'll just take out this white part in front here, and then I'll just run it down here, and run it around here, and it'll look kind of like a sash. And then I'll make her dress all white. And so, it seemed like a good idea. And I also, remember this? Remember the wreath? Candles and wreath? Yeah, I could stick that on her head, no problem. All right, So, here she is, Santa Lucia. There she is. Again, 32 count, so she's big like the other one. They're about the same size. And I used all the colors were like that other one. And because her name is shorter, I could make them all the same size, which was cool. And they wouldn't have to go all the way across. So I was able to run this the whole way. And then I solved the problem with the lettering. You know, there's lettering sticking out the edge here on some of them, you know, where the G hangs over. I didn't have to worry about doing any of that stuff. I was able to go side to side on those, so I was pretty happy about that. So there she is. I put some candles on top of her head. On both candles I used satin B5200. I don't know if you can really tell at all. Close, can you tell? I don't know that you can tell. And then also on the bottom of her skirt, I used some of that as well. And then I did another row, which not called for, is I used the let me look because I don't remember, PB. Where'd you go? PH. It's the high luster, or there it is, PHO2, high gloss silver for the treasure braid, petite treasure braid. And then I used some Krennic just because I'm a glutton for punishment, and I had some red. Used the 003 HL, the high luster Krennic, and used that around the edge of the shawl, or not the shawl, yeah, the shawl, to make it look like that. I had a little bit of issue with the top up here with the dress, because if you look at the pattern of the one I was using here, it's got different colors and it's dark and other things going on there. It was just real hard to get that to look real white, so I had to be kind of careful. And what I did is the front of this dress, I used the autumn pattern up until I got to the shawl. And then the other side of this, I used the Celtic Christmas again, like that, because I wanted just kind of the basic background. I didn't want all the other foo-fa stuff going on in the back of the train. And I kind of had to adjust it up because most of the white, I didn't want it to look real dingy and dark, so most of the white was covered up by the shawl part, so I just upped each color. So I think I used like 414 as the darkest color, and 01, and then 762 and B5200 I think was the kind of progression from darker to lighter. And so I just got rid of the 414, and then if it said 414, I made it 01. If it said 01, I made it 762. If it was 762, I made it B5200, and then I did B5200. So I kept the back of the dress a little bit lighter. As far as the beads go, I found these matte, I just had these matte green ones in my stash. So they're not Mill Hill or anything. And then I used these bigger pearls, because I tried some smaller ones and seed beads, and they just kind of disappeared in the white of the dress. So I kind of actually like the bigger beads. It looks kind of cool. And then I used the silver ones are 2022 Mill Hill silver glass beads. So those are called for. Well, they're not called for because it's a totally different pattern. This doesn't exist. So that's what we got there. Did I mention everything? I think so. I just put black satin on the back of this one, nothing special there, so I would use my little rolled up magazine trick on this one as well. It doesn't have a whole lot. What I typically use is 11 by 17 Q-snap when I'm doing stockings, because it fits without having to move stuff around. It fits pretty well, so I kind of would recommend that as well. So one of the things that helped a lot with doing these was I'm not a Facebook or social media participant very much at all, but I did, the first group that I did join is a private group. It's the L&L Celtic Ladies conversion Facebook group, and there was a lot of really helpful information. A lot of people shared their conversions. There's one where they designed capes and hoods and all kinds of stuff that are very pretty. And I did a ton of research. I looked at a lot of their pictures. I saw what other people were doing, and did a lot of research before I delved into things. Another resource I might direct you to is Stitchy Witch #1, or Stitchy Witch Floss Tube, and her video #1. She kind of goes through a Celtic lady and does a really good job, and she's got a number of different videos about that specific subject. So that's a place that you might want to use as a resource as well. But from looking at that Facebook group, my next one I'm going to do, I took a little break for a while to do work on some other things, but I'm going to do Jeanette Isabella, if you know the French Christmas Carol, Bring a Torch, Jeanette Isabella. And so I'm going to use this conversion that was done, and it has this cape. It's got kind of a French lieutenant woman vibe. I've got some 32 count silvery moon Lugana, so I'm going to do it on kind of a grayish background with a blue cape and hood. And then I'll kind of work out how to put it means I have to redesign her hand probably, but put a torch in her hand, and hopefully she won't look like she's just a pitchfork shy of going after Frankenstein as one of the angry villagers. Since she's carrying a torch, that would be bad. So anyway, another one I'm going to work on is one called Crystal. It's winter adjacent, it's Christmas adjacent, it's wintry. So I would do maybe a light blue one of these patterns perhaps, or conversions that have been done. So I'll be trying one of those next as well. And then another Lavender and Lace that I think would adapt well to a Christmas stocking. I don't have this one yet, but it's called Stargazer. And I think just the curve of the way she's there. I'm not crazy about the colors, so I might do something to maybe Christmassy her up a little bit, but I think she would work well on a Christmas stocking, so that's one that I've been thinking about. And a couple of other ones that are Mirabilia things. Royal Holiday, looks kind of like this, and Winter Queen. Both of these, again, are pretty large, is my understanding from what I've looked at, so they might be a little hard to do, but again, they've kind of got that bend to them and that sway, so I think they would adapt well to a Christmas stocking. They just might be huge. So, and then I was watching the Floss Tube one day, and somebody, and I apologize for not knowing who it was, because the second she held up Alternate Reality, it's a HAED, the artwork is by Josephine Wall. And I just stopped watching the TV and I went over to the HAED website and started looking at it. And I immediately knew what I wanted to do. Again, this dress, beautiful dress, but her face, it was her face that was just gorgeous that called me. Because, you know, you can have a lot of fancy ladies with gorgeous dresses, but if the face doesn't work, it doesn't happen. So what I did is went and looked at it. And what I thought is I will make her the Ghost of Christmas Present. That will be her name. It's a Christmas theme. It's a Christmas name, sort of. Stretching it a little bit there. But then I won't do all the background stuff because I don't like all the full coverage things. But at least I can do the mirror in her dress and not all the other stuff around it. And again, this dress sweeps out. It's a lovely color. She's looking back at Christmas past. So I think that'll work out pretty well. And, but again, do I want to do a full coverage piece? So about a week later I went back again and it was 50% off. Had to do it. So now I have it. Maybe someday you'll see it here. It's got to be stitched first, so. Alright. And then one other fancy lady that I saw on the Needleberry Stitcher, you might want to watch her because she's got she did a Mirabilia or Nora Corbett parade. She went through all of her patterns, a pattern parade. And I saw one there that's out of print, and it was one of those things that just, again, hit me when I saw it. I'd not seen it before, and when I saw it, it reminded me of this photo of my great aunt. When I retired, my mom had this big box of photos with family photos. I said, give me that. I got time on my hands. I'm going to take a look, and there, people, names were not written on the back, and I ended up getting into a lot of genealogy and research and traced back most of her, actually all 4 of her lines of parents, grandparents back to the cities that they came from originally and came to America. But I found this picture of my aunt, and I thought, well, there's a fancy lady if I ever saw one. You look at this photo, and even though it's in black and white, you see that there's all kinds of shiny stuff there. You got the weird fox thing around the neck, but it reminded me very much of this violet in the shoes and everything. So I saw that, and I guess I've been influenced by my great aunt. By the time I knew her, she wasn't dressing fancy ladylike, but her furnishings and her home and stuff. It's why my house looks like I was born in 1903, because I've picked up a lot of that sense from her. So that's what I want to accomplish someday. Find that chart and stitch that chart. Probably won't be a Christmas stocking, but that will be a tribute to my great aunt Lil. So. A couple of other fancy ladies that I have seen that I've got charts for that are in my stash are from Passione Ricamo. So it's an Italian designer, and this one, the first one I'm going to show you is called the Queen of Fairies, and this falls into the kitted but not committed phase. I've got everything I need, and so here's the chart, and I've got all the flosses and everything, and I ordered the fabric, and I got this from CrossStitchBoutique.com. It's lovely. It's 18 count, and it's called, the name of it, it's called Precious Petals. It's an Aida, and it's very pretty. I'll go way back here so you can see all of it. Look how pretty it is. I was going to make a Christmas stocking. I was going to make this dancer, because I've not gotten around to making a dancer out of all. It's the only missing reindeer name I haven't done. But if I do this, you see all the pretty modeling on the bottom? I'm going to cut that off when I do a Christmas stocking. I'm going to lose all of that. And it's not very Christmassy. It's very gorgeous. It's not very Christmassy. So I don't know that she's going to end up as a Christmas stocking. But I also, I don't know, I don't put a lot of fancy ladies on my wall just because, I don't know. So, I don't know what to do about that one. We'll see if it ends up getting stitched. All right, another one that I think might make a good Christmas stocking, but again, she might be a little too large, is Holiday Queen, also from Passione Ricamo, and I might have to get rid of the archways and stuff because that's going to be a little large. But the dress billows out a little bit to the side. That's my criteria. Prosperity Faye is another one. Again, we've got a very swoopy kind of a dress, and she's very Christmassy. That would be another good candidate. And then Winter Beauty Princess is not so much Christmassy, but she was pretty, and so I bought her. Okay. Just another couple of additional ones that I don't know if I will ever make, but just to show you in case you haven't seen these. Teresa Wenzler has a Stroke of Midnight. It's Cinderella, and also Day and Night. She's got a pair of those. So those are also from Teresa Wenzler. So considerations of those if you want to see those patterns. Okay. All right, so that kind of covers the Fancy Lady for Christmas stockings. So moving on to the travel portion. My next one is my current whip. This poster is a travel poster, and it's a Merejka kit. It's a company out of Poland, and it's the artwork is by Kay Carpenter, and she's part of the Anderson Design Group, and they've done a lot of travel posters. I'd seen this poster before and thought, that's just gorgeous. It looks a lot like Venice looked when we were there. And so when I saw that this was a kit, I couldn't order it fast enough. So here it is, and it's on 16 count Zweigart Ida in navy blue, and it's got lots of blues and purples and blacks and more navy, and stitching that on top of navy blue is an eye burner. This one I can only work on during the day because my eyes were tired all the time, and I couldn't figure out what it was. And it's like, I'm stitching this. This is I don't blink. That's what's going on. So, so there it is. And here's the example of, look at this. How does this not look exactly like this? When we were there, we rode not in the gondola, but we were in the Vaporetto, which is basically the city bus of Venice. And but then again, she was looking at us on the Vaporetto. We were in the Vaporetto looking at her, rowing down the Grand Canal with the Rialto Bridge in the background. Okay. Alright, so, and here is what I've got so far. I tried to do some outlining, at least on the two of them, as much as I could before I showed you this. I don't have it all done, but I at least wanted to get some definition. And I was a little worried that the stitches, if I thought about it, I might have done it on a 32 count so I could do 1/1 on the skin. But I think there is just kind of a fractional kind of a look to it, kind of a pixelated look to it. So I think it looks okay. I'm just worried her hands are going to look like the creature from the Black Lagoon a little bit. But I think it'll be alright. Maybe that's what you get for dipping your fingers in the Grand Canal. Although, you know, it wasn't really icky. I mean, you think about it, do you hear about the smell and stuff? We were there in September. It was wonderful. It was fine. I didn't notice any of that. So I'm just worried a little bit about that. Merejka has a London, and I actually got it on the chart here that they included in here. So this is what the London chart looks like. Couple kissing in a phone booth in front of Big Ben there. And a fun fact, if the phone booth is red, it has to be owned by the British Telephone Company. If it's not red, it can't be, well, if it's not red, it's not theirs, and it can't be red. It's got to be black or another color. So, fun fact for you to share with others. All right. So, that's Merejka. They also have one of Rome, but I haven't been to Rome. It's got a woman sitting in the front of a scooter with a guy behind her driving in front of the Colosseum. But to qualify, I've got to have been there. Those are my rules. Alright, so another example that I have are some travel ones that are involving fancy ladies. I've got some Elegant Ladies in my stash. I bought them on CrossStitchKitsAlla shop on Etsy. I'll put the name in the description down below. And there's a London one, and there's a Paris one, and then there's a woman that could be anywhere. I'll probably do the London and Paris because I love the dresses and the patterns and the design. The London one, I love the dress. It almost looks like the Venice dress as well. So I like the Paris one on that one. And then another travel-related theme is there is a freebie on a Mirabilia Nora Corbett freebie that's on the whiteshirt.com site. And it's called Leilani Hula Girl, and for about 20 years I went every winter to Hawaii, so that's a cute one that I will do and make that fancy lady, and I'll probably put that one up somewhere. And those cover my fancy ladies, so that kind of wraps up the promenade, I guess is what I was calling it, of fancy ladies. Tying up just a few loose ends on my last show, I covered the John Clayton Internationals, and I was working on it. I didn't have it done, but I'll show you what I finished. I did the Alhambra, and that is complete. So there it is, in Spain, in Granada, Spain. And I was going to frame those all together, and I bought the fabric, and actually it got lost in transit, so I had to reorder it again. But this is the fabric I'm going to put behind it, and it's got, you can see that kind of shiny thing. It's kind of neutrally except for the little bit of shine, but it's kind of a generic map globe thing of the world. So I figured that would be a nice thing to put behind it. So hopefully get those framed up eventually and be able to show you that in a future thing. As long as we're talking about John Clayton and we're talking about fancy ladies, he has a fancy ladies series. If you're interested in fancy ladies, I don't see those a lot on Flosstube, so go check them out. They don't necessarily speak to me that much. They're not very Christmassy. I guess that's part of it. And so, but they're very pretty. He's also got some dancers, so fancy dancers. So you might want to see those as well. So just a word for it's the Heritage Crafts is the name of the company that puts his stuff out. And then one last thing, I'm thinking about it list got some real urgency this week with the situation in Ukraine, and so horrible things that are going on, but it made me think of, there are patterns that I want to do that I've seen that I put in my favorites, and they're not doing anybody good there. I'm not able to stitch them. I may not be able to stitch them if something, if they have to leave the country, they can't keep their shop open. I've seen some shops already be closed, and it may support those people as well that are running those shops. So I did some ordering and got some stuff, And Awesome Pattern Studio is one that has a whole bunch of travel theme stuff, and they have almost 600 cities. They're similar to the Satsuma Street, the little they're the little pretty little cities that they do. They've got, I don't know, 6 or 8 of them, but like I said, they've got 600 of these, and they're from all over the world and all over the U.S. There's cities that I thought, who would even do one of those? They did one in my hometown. They did one in St. Paul, Minnesota. They did one in Minneapolis. So I bought those. A lot of places I've been. I'll just pop them up here and show them to you. There's San Juan, Puerto Rico that I've been to. Honolulu and Maui and Lanai. I've been to all of those. A few years ago for a work thing, we went to Mexico and we got to go to Chichen Itza. So I did one of those. Granada and Seville, Spain. Lisbon and Sintra, Portugal. Those will all go together. I had a hard time finding a Sintra one, so I was very pleased that I could find one of Sintra. California, I got Disneyland. There's a Sleeping Beauty Castle. There's Malibu, Honolulu, San Diego, and Coronado. There's a San Diego one, but there's also a San Diego Coronado one. And my husband and I went on our honeymoon there, so I did that. When I was in college, I went to Strasbourg, France, so I got one of those. Sorrento is one I don't see a whole lot of in cross-stitch charts, so I got the Sorrento. Many, many years ago, I went to Salt Lake City and Park City. I think the Park City one's really cute, so I like that and got those. And I went to Copenhagen and Denmark and Dusseldorf, Germany, so those all put together. And then, like I said, even if you haven't traveled much, you may find your own hometown there, because, like I said, I found my own, and it has, like, landmarks that I recognize and I know and can pick them out, so they're cool. Another site is Zephyr Mood. Previously I had bought from them. I bought France, one of kind of a moon silhouette that I'll show you here, and there's also a France Galaxy kind of looking silhouette. And then I bought one that looks like Rio Maggiore, the Cinque Terre area in Italy that we've been to a few years ago. And then there's a Stitch Lovers shop, and I got a Portugal one from them. Again, this was a while back, but you might want to look at their site, and they're also in Ukraine. So I encourage you to do that. I mean, it's not much, but maybe it's something to somebody. So, well, if you enjoyed this, I would encourage you to maybe go back and look at my first video that I did. If you haven't had a chance to do that, it's called I See London, I See France. And it's got the stockings that I did for our family and my immediate family, and then some places I'd been using the John Clayton International's charts. And just a couple of other fancy lady type related floss tubes that if I haven't already mentioned them. Mondot Stitchers. She does lots and lots of fancy ladies and pattern walkthroughs and completed projects and all kinds of stuff. Mirabilia, Nora Corbett's. She's also a fellow Minnesotan, so she's got lots of videos, so you may want to take a look at her. And Rolanda Duke, D-U-E-C-K. She's the Stitching Addict, and she's got a lot of the usual suspects, but I saw some other things that I have not seen other places. Some Joan Elliott's and some other kinds of things, so she was kind of fun to watch. The Virginia Stitcher also has a lot of Lavender and Lace, in addition to the Celtic Ladies that you might want to look at. I don't know that I've found all the floss tubes of all the fancy ladies, so I need your help. If you know of some that you think I need to check out, please let me know. Make a comment down below. If you have suggestions, I would like to see any of those comments. I'd like to get to know you a little bit better, and hope to see you then. Thanks for joining me. We'll see you later. Bye.